achieved a modern miracle, the Arabian way. The U.S.-Saudi relationship has been a bedrock of security and prosperity.
I think it was a very successful trip. I think you have to be honest. Oil that they sell to China. So it's been very important to keep it in the American camp. Reverse the sanctions on Syria. And that's a good example of Trump being disruptive and thinking out of the box in a positive way.
We will work together. We will be together. We will succeed together. We will win together. And we will always be friends. Trump has returned to the Middle East as a deal-maker-in-chief, not a preacher-in-chief of Western values. His message has been pragmatic and transactional. No lectures, just deals. Now, this is in stark contrast to that typical Western diplomatic style seen under earlier presidents like President Biden. So no wonder the Middle Eastern leaders like President Trump. They've treated him like an emperor, wined and dined and feted him. And by any definition, unless you are a Democrat, his trip has resulted in historic deals in dollar numbers for the United States. This month has already seen a whirlwind of energy by him. On May the 6th, he cut a deal with the Houthis. The Israelis were dumbstruck to find out about it after the event. On May the 10th, he claimed credit for a ceasefire between India and Pakistan, telling them to think trade rather than war. On May the 11th, his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, met with Iranian officials to discuss a possible nuclear deal. On May the 12th, America and China declared a trade truce. And now, in the Gulf, he's lifted sanctions on Syria and met its leader, Ahmed al-Sharaa, who until last year had a $10 million bounty on his head by the Americans. And when asked about him by reporters, Donald Trump described al-Sharaa as being a young, attractive guy, a tough guy with a strong past, very strong past, a fighter.
Attractive guy, tough guy, strong past, very strong past, fighter.
The United States just established relations with Syria after 25 years. Gaza and the release of all hostages was also on the agenda until the Israelis did the hospital massacre when he was actually sitting in Qatar. Trump was not happy with Netanyahu. Rumors are that Trump felt Netanyahu was being too pushy and interfering with his Iranian policy, and therefore Israel has been sidelined during this trip to the Middle East. Trump was also during this period pushing Russian and Ukrainian presidents together to meet for talks in Turkey, and even suggested that he might love to join them in Turkey. But sitting down with Putin has already come back on the agenda. He's declared that he will have a one-on-one summit with Putin. And that is what is needed to bring peace to that region. Coming back to Trump's Middle East mega deal marathon, which started with an extraordinary speech in Riyadh, where he set the tone of a Middle East defined by commerce rather than chaos. And he applauded the Gulf countries' transformation, not as Western impositions, but as Arab achievements.
It is defined by commerce, not chaos, where it exports technology, not terrorism, and where people of different nations, religions, and creeds are building cities together, not bombing each other out of existence. We don't want that.
He then proved why Foggy Bottom and what he calls the swamp in Washington hates him by saying that the gleaming marvels of Riyadh and other cities in the Gulf region were not created by nation builders, neocons, or liberal non-profits, but by Arab regimes that embrace their own national traditions and heritage.
Transformation has not come from Western interventionists or flying people in beautiful planes giving you lectures on how to live and how to govern your own affairs. No, the gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits. The Middle East has been brought by the people of the region themselves, the people that are right here, the people that have lived here all their lives, developing your own sovereign countries, pursuing your own unique visions and charting your own destinies in your own way. It's really incredible what you've done.
This broke from not only American foreign policy orthodoxy, but Trump's words were a far cry from those that he has said himself in the past. For example, when he was interviewed on CNN during his 2016 campaign trail, he said that, "I think Islam hates us." Or even when he came into power in 2019, the very first thing he did was implement the Muslim ban in that first administration.
Do you think Islam is at war with the West?
I think Islam hates us.
But let's remember, most importantly, Donald Trump is, and always has been, a salesperson looking for deals. And as a US leader, he's reoriented Washington's role in the world in that more transactional direction, one based on what he believes as America first wins, rather than ideology or sweeping visions of what's right and wrong. President Trump in the Middle East, as he knows, that's where the easy money is, and he has got a lot of it already so far this week. He is coming back home with trillions of dollars of investment promises in his pocket. From 1.2 trillion in Qatar to 600 billion plus in Saudi Arabia to 1.4 trillion in the UAE. He is all about the quick wins. But by tying in the Middle Eastern countries more closely with the United States, he's also trying to serve the United States' longer-term objectives of outmaneuvering China in the region, especially in defining the new technical framework. Interestingly, and it's ironic as well, that Trump's America First tour is built on that same playbook that China has pioneered. It's all about the deals, not doctrine. However, while Trump is busy signing these trillion-dollar deals in this last week that we've seen, getting money from the Middle East, China has been around for a long time in the same region. And at the same time, it was building long-term economic arteries. So a quick rundown of the two of the major countries he's visited this week, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, and in my final section, how this impacts China. Do subscribe to the channel. If you enjoy the content, I would really appreciate it. The bromance between Trump and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is alive and kicking. The prince went himself to receive President Trump from the airport. And by contrast, President Biden in 2022 was given the cold shoulder, and he was received by a lowly governor. And his request to lower oil prices was also ignored. Donald Trump praised the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman as being an incredible man, very wise beyond his years, and asked whether he slept at night given how much he's achieved so far. During his visit to Saudi Arabia, President Donald Trump has secured a series of high-profile deals in the kingdom, which are close to $1 trillion, of which $600 billion is investment commitment over the next 4 years in the United States in the defense, technology, and energy sectors. Another $142 billion is for a historic arms agreement which encompasses air and missile defense systems, air force and space capabilities, maritime security, and communications. Partnerships were established with US technology firms, including NVIDIA and AMD, who are to supply semiconductors to the Saudi AI company Huawei. A $9 billion deal was also signed between the US firm Burkan World Investments and Saudi's Grand Mines Mining, which aims to develop critical mineral resources. Thanks to Donald Trump, the Crown Prince has emerged as a global diplomat during this presidency already. He's played an active role so far on the Russia-Ukrainian peace talks, and now similarly on Syria, and is said to have playing a role in Iran as well. President Trump made it clear during his speech in Saudi Arabia that he removed the sanctions on Syria due to advice from the prince. And in his speech, he went on to say, "Oh, what I do for the Crown Prince." He met with the Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa in Saudi Arabia, along with the Crown Prince and the Turkish President Erdogan on the telephone with them. Trump lifted the sanctions on Syria despite Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu trying to dissuade him from doing so. Israel has been carrying out repeated military incursions into Syria, effectively destabilizing that country. But Trump has asked Syria to join the Abrahamic Accords, and he told reporters that Ahmed al-Shara said he may be willing to join eventually. Now, this would be historic if it happens, given that Syria was among the first Arab states that invaded Israel following its declaration of independence in 1948. It went to war again with the country in 1967 and 1973. And both nations have disagreements over the Golan Heights. Syria has not only refused to recognize Israel, but has also helped both Hezbollah and Hamas in their opposition to Israel. Now, the Saudis have promised Syrian investment once the American sanctions were lifted as part of their broader strategy to keep the country away from Iranian influence and to strengthen their own influence at the same time. On Friday, the World Bank has announced that Saudi Arabia and Qatar have just paid off the Syrian loans. Now, the Crown Prince is also said to be a key thought leader for the president for not bombing Iran. MBS has publicly endorsed the revival of nuclear negotiations between the United States and Iran, and he signaled Saudi Arabia's own willingness to support diplomatic efforts to curb Iran's nuclear ambitions. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has realized that what he needs in his region to achieve that primary dream of his, the modernization of Saudi Arabia, he needs stability in the region. For the first time, the Saudis are at odds with the Israelis when it comes to attacking Iran's nuclear facilities. And there's also a speculation in the oil markets that the prince may have helped to ensure that the United States president's trip was a success by taking steps beforehand to help lower the oil prices, right as the president was facing scrutiny over his tariff policies and the inflation they were causing. Saudi Arabia recently made a dramatic shift in policy and pushed the OPEC Plus countries to increase oil output, even though demand outlook is actually tanking. The group's decision to boost output in May and later in June as well has sent oil prices tumbling to around $60 a barrel by early May, and this is down from $82 a barrel at the start of the year. Overall, it was a win-win art of the deal visit for both countries. The Crown Prince is becoming established as a world player with standing, with the blessing of the President Trump. He's also getting the chips he wants to develop his diversified economy as per his Vision 2030. And Trump, well, he's getting his huge dollar number investment deals and an acknowledgement that the Saudis will join the Abrahamic Accords when the time is right and the Saudi conditions are met. However, while Trump's whirlwind diplomacy looks really bold, it's really playing catch-up to China's decade-long soft power investments in infrastructure, ports, and AI cooperation in the region. So how much ground can he now actually cover in this catch-up game is another question. And remember that the Saudis, along with the UAE, are starting to play a more active role in BRICS. Even though the Saudis have not officially joined yet, UAE is a member. But more on that in the final section on China. Donald Trump must have felt his Christmas come early. The UAE upped both the Qataris and the Saudis and gave a $1.4 trillion investment pledges in the United States over the next 10 years. They're focusing on AI, semiconductors, manufacturing, and energy projects. Now, AI is the real big thing to focus in this country. The UAE had already been talking to Donald Trump and his team since February of this year. He's finally bended and agreed. The UAE will collaborate through the Emirati firm G42 to build the largest AI data center outside the United States in Abu Dhabi. And very importantly, they'll be able to import massive amounts of AI chips. An agreement was made that they could import up to 500,000 of NVIDIA's advanced AI chips annually. It doesn't actually specify right now which one of these chips. Are they the B100s or are they the H100s? This really supports the UAE's ambition to become a global AI hub. The new AI campus in Abu Dhabi will be supported by 5 gigawatts of electric power. and it will be over 10 square miles, double the size of the one that Meta was due to set up in Louisiana in the United States. It will be the largest such project outside the United States and will help United States companies serve customers in Africa, Europe, and Asia. Now that is massive news, but it's caused massive consternation in the United States. After all, Trump was all about America first and bringing manufacturing back, jobs back to the United States. As Trump himself recently reminded Tim Cook about setting up Apple factories in the United States and not India. And chips are doubly sensitive due to the national security reasons. The Biden administration had limited chip access for the UAE to ensure that it does not become a competitor and to restrict its abilities to get to China. Critics say that the UAE is not only a neophyte when it comes to AI, but is also too close to China. But the reality is that the UAE balanced its relations with both China and the USA very well in the past decade. Building a dominant AI sector to replace the oil economy is a priority for the country. And when it comes to the energy needed, the land, the vision, as well as the money and the budding skill sets, including getting them very easily from India when needed, which other country in the world can all put everything together in the best combination apart from the UAE? The reality is that United States companies need to build data centers abroad because the maximum amount of power available in the United States right now, for example, is around 50 megawatts, enough to support around 25,000 of NVIDIA's newest AI chips. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, posted on X, the agreement opened up a historic Middle Eastern partnership on AI between our two nations. However, there is that growing massive pushback already in the United States on these deals, especially from the Democrats, who are saying that the Trump's family interests are behind these deals. Donald Trump's sons have recently received over $2 billion in their World Liberty Organization. The alternative is that the United States, if it does not get involved itself in the UAE, then it may lose the country and that region to the Chinese AI system framework. And while the AI chip deals with the UAE may sound historic, remember, China's technology is already embedded in much of the Gulf's data and telecom architecture through Huawei, Alibaba Cloud, and Baidu. Now, these deals will, however, definitely affect the UAE and China's relationship on technology. But how much is the question? And that will depend on how much of Trump's deal actualizes. MBS and MBZ are not choosing between Washington and Beijing. They're basically leveraging both for their own maximum benefit, as you'd expect from any country in its own self-interest. And so far, they've done a good job. Now, coming briefly to China, it is for the most Middle Eastern countries their largest trading partner and their biggest fossil fuel customer. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, China has already invested over $155 billion in the broader Middle East. It's funded ports in Oman, rail projects in Iran, industrial zones in Egypt, and the energy pipelines in Iraq and Saudi Arabia. By 2024, the Middle East became the top recipient of China's BRI investments and secured around $39 billion in construction and investment deals. Saudi Arabia alone accounted for around $19 billion of this total. Now remember, this is China putting money into the region, not taking out of the region, unlike Donald Trump and the United States. Chinese technology has been in the Middle East for decades now. When Huawei was cut off from many Western countries and India later, it worked closely with the Middle Eastern governments. Huawei has partnered with the UAE telecom operators like Ju to develop and deploy advanced 5G and 5.5G networks. And it's positioning the UAE as a leader in the next generation of connectivity. In Saudi Arabia, Huawei has collaborated with telecom companies to enhance 5G connectivity and is contributing to the kingdom's digital transformation goals under Vision 2030. In data center establishments, Alibaba Cloud has already established centers in key Middle Eastern countries, including Dubai and Riyadh, and offering cloud computing services to support these regional digitalization efforts. The company has also launched training centers in Dubai to bolster digital skills and support the growth of the local tech ecosystem. Also, remember, it was China that played a key role in March 2023 in the diplomatic breakthrough between Saudi Arabia and Iran to restore diplomatic relations. China's approach of non-interference in domestic affairs has always made it an attractive partner for Middle Eastern countries who seek economic development without the political conditions that Western countries like to impose. So yes, Trump is back, but in a region already rewired by Chinese influence. Can one mega deal marathon really reset the game? Or is it already too late? Share with me your thoughts. Thank you again for joining me today, and have a great day.